Okay, you guys, look at this.
So everybody knows the story about Leonidas, and he selected 300 Spartans to go to the hot gates at Thermopylae and stand to the last man to hold back the advance of the Persian king Xerxes, who was going to take over all of Greece. He hand-selected those 300 men. And the reason he selected the 300, a lot of people think, did he select the greatest warriors? He selected the people who would go stand with him because they were the ones who had the strongest women. And he knew that if the men were going to go die, he had to have their wives who could actually hold it together and stand strong and back this decision of sacrificing for the greater good of all Sparta. Because if they lost it, they were the heart of Sparta. If they lost their mind and they second-guessed it and they questioned it, Sparta would divulge into chaos. So everybody...
Okay, you heard that, right? Now look at this comment. When the king's wife, Leonidas, was asked why the Spartans were the only women in Greece who ruled their husbands, Gorgo replied, "Because we are the only women who give birth to men." In other words, only men who had the confidence to accept women as equals were real men. If that isn't the truth, I don't know what is. Now, I don't agree with a woman ruling over her husband. Okay, I think, given the fact that the woman came from the man's rib, the woman should be submissive to her husband. But a real man can see women as equals without being a smart ass and saying, "Oh, okay, you're my equal, then go do construction work like a man and see if we're equal then." With some kind of childish, elementary mental standpoint on the situation, having no spiritual sight into it at all. Only looking at it in a carnal way, being nothing but carnal, looking like a carnival, a carnal carnival. A real man can see women and accept women as equals. That takes a real man. A man who is insecure and always has to keep his ego inflated will consider women as beneath him or as beneath men. As if they are nothing but slaves in the kitchen raising children and that's it. That's disgusting. It's inhumane. Women are not alive just to give birth and be there for someone to pleasure themselves through intercourse, raise children, and cook for you. Our entire existence is not to serve man. It is to serve God. Not you men. It is our purpose on this earth to serve God, just as it is yours. We, men and women, both, were made to complement each other. Woman was created because it was not seen fit for man to be alone. The woman was made as a companion, like a best friend, or best friend and a lover, being there for you always. Yes, a man who is lacking in confidence refuses to see women as equals. And if he does, then he'll jump right into the argument of, well, how many men can do these jobs that women can't? No shit, Sherlock. Nobody's saying anything about that. Nobody's saying that women can go do all these jobs that only men can do just as good as men. Nobody's saying that just because we're expecting some common decency and to be seen as equals. Get real. Get real. Even when Jesus respected women more than the disciples had the right to question Jesus Christ himself because he respected women more and spoke to them like it was nothing. Don't you see a common pattern with the stupidity? Even the disciples themselves tried to question Jesus Christ, the Alpha and the Omega himself, like he was wrong for speaking to a woman like she was a human being. There's been a common pattern of women being seen as just slaves, and God forbid they get a divorce. How dare they? Because people want to bring in the argument of God then. It doesn't matter if she's being abused. It doesn't matter if she's being beaten every night, because divorce is against the eyes of God. Well, I'm here to tell you something. I'm following the command of Jesus Christ. You understand? Would a loving father expect his daughter to stay in a relationship where she's getting the shit beat out of her every night, or in a different situation where she's getting cheated on, and her man is bringing home not only bacteria but heartbreak into the family? No. God is no egocentric, pride-filled man, and God does not expect women to bow down to men. He expects all women and men alike to bow down to him and him alone, because he is the Almighty. Man is not God, and he often puts himself in that position because he's so used to stepping up on a pedestal, and he wouldn't be up so high if he didn't have women to stand on top of in the first place. Nobody wants their pedestal taken because they want to stay in a high place. Men and women both are to be treated as equals, without these smart asses coming around the corners and sticking their heads out of your sink drain saying, well, women can't do all these jobs that men do, and without men, they wouldn't be done. Obviously, I agree. That's why there's men and women. Do you see what I am saying? Maranatha. Women, there's certain things that women do that men can't do. Like, for instance, give birth. And that's not all we can do. There's a lot of strong women who have to hold up everything in the house. And if she's not perfect, she's seen as horrible. Do you know what it's like to keep up with screaming kids, be covered in sweat and nauseous and exhausted every day, and everybody to expect you to be perfect? Especially those who have their life together and they're living on their own. God forbid she shows a little bit of stress and needs a little bit of help. God forbid she's in the kitchen and needs some help, because that's a woman's job, right? Get out of here. God is not inhumane or egocentric or pride-filled, and nor does he lack in intelligence in the way that man does. Man's lack in intelligence is why he's so egocentric and pride-filled. It takes a real man to see women as their equals, because that is literally what we were created to be. Literally. When God saw Adam, it says it in the Bible. Go look. When God saw Adam, he saw Adam and Eve both. When he saw Adam, he was looking at Adam and Eve both because they were of one flesh. Flesh of his flesh, bone of his bone. Hello. It says it all right there in the Word of God. Men, in their egocentric obsession with control and always wanting to be an authority, not knowing how to step down and give that authority to God first and foremost, and always wanting it to be them. God forbid a woman gets the same respect a man does with a lot of you. Not all of you. There's a lot of you who actually use the brains you were given, but there's also a lot of people who don't even use the brains they were given. They just let everyone think for them. They go off what they're told rather than using some common sense and thinking for themselves and thinking, does that seem right? I'm not scared of this world, and I'm not scared of the things coming down on it. I'm not scared of the last days, because for believers, it's our turn to rejoice. Those who believe in God and love the truth have been ostracized, oppressed, and killed off for all existence. The one time we are able to stand up and rejoice because Jesus is about to be here, anybody expecting us to be quiet should automatically know by default they look insane. Did you know the definition of psychotic means one of those things? One of the definitions of psychotic is not following societal norms. What is the normal for society right now? To be completely immoral, to call abomination bravery and praise abomination, and to be completely sexually immoral towards children, and just immoral in total. And if you're not any of those things that society considers normal, then apparently you're psychotic. Apparently, you're by default, by the definition of man, you're psychotic if you're not immoral and praising abominations the way society is now doing. Mankind is prone to error, both men and women. But I'll tell you one thing. Women are more often overpowered and spoken over and expected to just shut their mouth. And I'm telling you now, Jesus is smarter than any man on this earth. And he's also smarter than any woman. And if there's anybody who understands oppression and being treated unfairly, it's Jesus. Jesus spoke to women like it was nothing because he understood the barbarian, caveman-like thought process that was being used by a lot of men who were treating women as less than. It's disgusting. They all treated it like it was women's fault for sin because Eve ate the apple. I'm here to tell you something. Eve came from the rib of Adam. She was the bone of his bone and the flesh of his flesh. So when she sinned, so did Adam. Don't forget, he also ate that fruit. And women have been treated like it's mostly their fault because of Eve. But if you notice, she was just created, and here comes the serpent manipulating her. Can you imagine just being born into existence and automatically being manipulated and being expected to just, yes, you're supposed to follow the word of God, always. But nobody wants to talk about the manipulating serpent in the garden either. It's all Adam and Eve's fault. Yes, no, they should have never questioned the word of God no matter what anything said. But they never talk about the serpent who came in there manipulating them and messing with their heads in the first place. They're too busy trying to divide each other amongst themselves than they are looking at the darkness that started the whole problem. They're more busy dividing themselves up than they are looking at the source of the darkness in the first place. Maranatha.